Hello everybody, this is Todd Jackson again, and I'm back, and in the words of Emeril Lagasse, we're going to kick this up a notch. We're going into Honeybee Biology 201, and this is probably a little bit more than the basic beekeeper really needs, but hey, why not? So the honeybee, it's an insect, so we're going over the class, order, family, genus, species, and subspecies. The main thing is the honeybee is Apis, which is bee, mellifera, which means honey bearing, and then in this case it's linguistic, which is Italian honeybees. So we are talking about the Apis mellifera linguistic. So as we continue on with this kind of Latin, the insect is actually from the Latin word insectus, which means to divide into sections. So we're actually going to take this honeybee and divide it into its three basic components: the head, thorax, and abdomen. So let's start out with the head, right up there in the front. It is where all the visual, olfactory, gustatory, that's a fancy word for eating, inputs are received and processed. So the antenna, the eyes, the mouth, and we're going to specialize on some internal structures in the head. So the antenna are the major collection tools for the bee. It's got taste receptors, it has touch and smell. The antenna also can detect temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide, along with gravity and wind speed. These are very, very important to the bee. The antenna itself is divided into three main parts: the scape, the pedestal, and the flagellum. The pedestal is attached to the scape. These two segments are responsible for the way the antenna moves. It's an elbow-like joint. It allows the antenna to rotate in many directions. The flagellum is divided into subsegments called phlagomeres. In a honeybee, females have 10 phlagomeres and males have 11 phlagomeres. The outer surfaces of the flagellum are covered with different receptors, each having a special purpose. The flagellum, a worker has 3,000 chemoreceptors, a drone has 300,000 chemoreceptors, and a queen only has 1,600. Kind of the bonus here is, and we're going to see with the sensory organs, is the males really have superior sense, and that's probably because they really need to do their main job of procreating. So they need to find the queen, so they have 100 times more chemoreceptors than the average worker. Now let's go on to the Johnston's organ. It's an additional receptor that's found inside the pedestal at the base of the flagellum. This receptor is able to detect vibrations and slight changes in antenna position. During flight, the actual bending of the antenna as the air flows over the bee can actually detect the airspeed. Also, in addition to this, which a lot of people say that actually bees can't hear, but actually they have a rudimentary ability to hear through the Johnston organ, which they can detect the sound vibrations, and it's their ability for the bees to read the dance language even in the dark. Let's go on to the eyes, and we'll start with the compound eyes. Bees have two compound eyes which make up a large area of the head surface. Each compound eye is composed of ommatidia, which include light focusing elements and light sensing cells. Workers have 4,000 to 6,000, and drones have 7,000 to 8,600. Now again, we're going back to the drone's main job is to find a queen during her mating flight. So again, more receptors for the male. Simple eyes. Bees also have three simple eyes near the top of their head called ocellia. They do not focus, but they provide information about light intensity. As in most insects, bees' eyes are not designed to see high-resolution images like ours. They see a mosaic and have better detection of motion. So as we look at this picture here, the bee's vision is in the ultraviolet spectrum. That's where they excel. The humans is more towards the red. So the yellow flower on the left is what we see with our eyes. If we had the same vision as bees, the flower would be what looks like in the middle. And with the bee's compound eyes, that is what a bee would see with that yellow flower. It would be actually a white pinkish with a red middle. Mouth parts. The mandibles are paired and can open and close to chew wood, manipulate wax, and clean other bees. Also, they bite other workers and pests such as mites. The proboscis is used for sucking liquids such as nectar, water, honey, and exchanging food with other bees through trophallaxis. Internal organs. The brain is capable of making complicated calculations on distances for different locations. Giving its size, it is actually very powerful. The subesophageal ganglion, the main component of the nervous system, is in addition to the ventricle nerve cord that runs all the way through the thorax to the abdomen. Now, one really important thing here in the head is the hypopharyngeal glands. In young nurse bees, these are the large glands, and they produce protein-rich secretion that is used to feed the bees. But as bees age, they actually decrease in size and they change in function. They actually going from feeding as nurse bees the young, but they actually change and they're able to break down the sucrose into fructose and glucose. So these actually change over time. But the main importance is the hypopharyngeal glands in young nurse bees actually are used to feed the young larvae. The mandibular glands. In young workers, these glands produce a lipid-rich white substance which is mixed with the secretion from the hypopharyngeal glands to make royal jelly or worker jelly, which is fed to the young larvae. In forager bees, these glands also produce heptone, a component of alarm pheromone. In the queen, the mandibular glands are also a powerful source of the queen pheromone. The saliva glands are a pair that produce saliva, which is mixed with wax scales to change the physical properties of the wax so it allows it to be malleable. All right, now let's go on to the thorax. It is a center of locomotion. There are 3 pairs of legs and 2 pairs of wings. The main components of the bee's legs, and again, these are insects, and these are basically throughout the insect kingdom, is the coxa, the trochanter, the femur, the tibia, the metatarsus, and the tarsus. And those are the major components of the leg. So let's talk about the legs. The front leg has what's called an antenna cleaner along with a velum. This is used to clean the antennas, and it's very important for the bees to maintain clean antennas because that is one of their major sensory organs, so that when they go into the hive, again, that's a dark area, and they use that clean antenna to help them navigate through the hive. Both the front legs and the middle legs are covered with hairs which actually attach pollen. And here's an example of a bee cleaning its antenna using the antenna cleaner and the velum as it wraps around the antenna. So we go to the hind leg. And the hind leg is actually the pollen basket, or in Latin is corbicula, which means basket. Kind of nice of them to say that. And then the pollen press, which is right in between the 2 segments of legs where the bees actually compact the pollen and then put it into the corbicula. And here you can see in this video that there are bees actually using the pollen press to compress the pollen to put into the corbicula. Wings. The front wings are larger than the hind wings, and the 2 are synchronized in flight with a row of hooks called humuli, or singular called humulus. On the hind wing, they would hitch to the folded edge on the rear of the front wing, so they kind of interlock, kind of like bee Velcro, I would guess. But anyways, it actually hooks the 2 wings together so the flight surface stays together. So now we're going to discuss the rudimentary flight capabilities of a honeybee. In the diagram, the wings are shown in blue, the pleural plates are in red, the vertical muscles are in a tan color, and the longitudinal muscles are orange. Now, how this works is actually the muscles pull against the thorax and compress the thorax and decompress the thorax for actual flying, and the wings pivot on the pleural plates. And there you go. The abdomen. This is a center for digestion, defense, and reproduction for the drones and the queens. So I'm going to discuss the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the digestive tract, wax production, and my favorite, the stinger, and then finally the reproduction system. Let's start with the bee's circulatory system. Honeybees have an open circulatory system. Hemolymph, which is the bee's blood, is mixed with lymphatic fluid, and it freely circulates through the bee's body. The dorsal heart in the abdomen has small holes called ostia. The dorsal heart in the abdomen pulses, pulling hemolymph through the thorax and into the head. From the head, the hemolymph percolates through the thorax and back into the abdomen. An open circulatory system is kind of like a garden soaker hose. The water goes in and just kind of slowly seeps out. The bee's respiratory system. The respiratory system of the bees has 4 basic structures: the trachea, the tracheola, the air sac, and the sphericals. The sphericals are actually the holes on the side of the bee. They're actually breathing through the sphericals in the side of the abdomen and are pulled in through the trachea, into the tracheola, and into the air sacs. The digestive tract. The esophagus starts near the mouth and goes through the thorax and enlarges near the end to form the honey crop, which can expand based on demand. The proventriculus removes pollen grains in the nectar and prevents backflow of digestive food, ensuring the nectar is never contaminated. The contents of the crop can be expelled back into the cells or fed to other workers. That fancy word, trophallaxis. So again, the proventriculus acts kind of like a one-way check valve to prevent the digestive fluids in the bee backflowing into the honey crop. Next is the ventriculus, or the midgut, and this functions as the stomach and is the largest part of the bee's intestine. Next is the myopygian tubes, which are small strands of tubes attached near the end of the ventriculus and the functions as the kidneys to remove waste from the hemolymph. Continuing on down to the back of the bus, we have the rectum. It's highly expandable, which enables workers to refrain from defecating for months, and this is kind of how they can survive that cold winter.
Okay.
Wax production. Workers around 6 to 12 days old can produce wax scales in their 4 pairs of wax glands. The glands are concealed between intersegmental membranes. The workers chew them up and add saliva to form the wax. Now on to everybody's favorite, the stinger. The stinger has barbs and prevents the stinger from being pulled out. The stinger apparatus breaks off, leaving the venom gland and the muscles controlling the gland behind to autonomously pump the venom into the victim. And also the bonus is an alarm pheromone is also released to mark the victim. And now we see the actual function of a honeybee stinger as the 2 serrated barbs bury themselves into the skin and autonomously injecting the venom. Fun. So let's continue on with the reproductive systems and start with the queens. The reproductive system includes the spermatheca and the ovary. The spermatheca contains the sperm from the queen's mating flight during a 1-week window around 6 to 16 days after emergence. And again, this is a very slim window, and after she misses that window, she will not be able to actually mate. So she uses this sperm to fertilize all the eggs produced in her lifetime, and the sperm can live inside the spermatheca for up to 4 years. In the ovary of the laying queen, there are individual ovarioles with mature eggs appearing yellowish. Each egg moves down the tubes of the ovarioles as they become larger and more mature, eventually reaching the oviduct. In the oviduct, the eggs are fertilized, female, or remain unfertilized, drone, and then laid by the queen. Let's go to the drones. The reproduction system includes the endophallus, which is designed to disperse a large quantity of seminal fluid and spermatozoa. Mating occurs mid-flight and lasts about 5 seconds. Drones reach sexual maturity about 2 weeks of age after they emerge. So, guys, think about that. 5 seconds, that's all you get. All right. So let's finish off with pheromones. The bees' main communication source is through pheromones. So let's start out with the alarm pheromones. The mandibular glands produce an alarm pheromone, along as the Chesneskikov gland near the stinger shaft. It actually releases an alarm pheromone and marks you for the other bees to show up to help out. Brood recognition pheromone. This inhibits the ovary development in worker bees and helps nurse bees distinguish worker larvae from drone larvae. Next is drone pheromone. This is what attracts other flying drones to promote a drone congregation area and the site suitable for mating of virgin queens. My theory is probably the drone pheromone probably smells like whiskey, cigars, and Old Spice. Gets all the old guys over there to say, hey, this is the mating area. Next is the Nansenhoff pheromone. This pheromone is emitted by worker bees and used for orientation and recruiting of other bees. Also, the footprint pheromone. This pheromone is left by bees when they walk. It's useful in marking foraging sites and enhancing the Nansenhoff pheromones. Forager pheromone. This pheromone keeps the ratio of nurse bees and forager bees in balance and is really beneficial to the hive. So let's finally finish off with the queen's pheromones. These are probably the most essential pheromones in the hive that keep it together. The queen mandibular pheromone, or QMP, this pheromone is one of the most important sets of pheromones in the beehive. It affects social behavior, maintenance of the hive, swarming, mating behavior, and the inhibition of ovary development in worker bees. Queen footprint pheromone. In the queen, it is an oily secretion that the queen's tarsal glands deposit on the comb as she walks. This inhibits queen cell construction, thereby inhibiting swarming, and its production diminishes as the queen ages. And then last but not least is the Duforce gland pheromone. This pheromone helps nurse bees distinguish the eggs laid by the queen and eggs laid by laying workers. So this pheromone is deposited on true eggs laid by the queen, and it helps the worker bees distinguish between that rogue laying worker and the actual queen eggs that she's laid. So my final slide here, we have any questions, but actually I have one more, is this picture here actually represents another pheromone present in the hive, and that's called the retinue. This pheromone is basically the royal court. Retinue is a 14th century French word for royal court. Today's word would probably be entourage. So with that, again, keeping with Francis Bacon, wonder is the seed of knowledge.